Um,
Right.
all right. Welcome to Third Floor Views, a projection of Chesapeake family life. And it is where we talk about everything from kids to health to education. I'm your host, Janet Jefferson. Today, we are talking about a challenging topic. We're talking about how it is to work from home while helping your kids navigate virtual school. And I've got some incredible people here with me today, some true powerhouses. So I'm so excited to welcome Karima Davis and also Darren Michelle Gilliam. Am I pronouncing your last name right?
Yes. Yep.
Awesome. So thank you both of you for being here today. And then we might have a few other moms joining us as we continue along. To our viewers, feel free to jump in with any comments or questions you have in the comment section, and we can address those as they pop up. So first, what I want to do is give both of you a chance to just tell me a little bit about sort of who you are. What's your situation? So tell me about your work and how it has changed over the past year, sort of where you were at in your career, and then the pandemic hit, and now what that looks like. And then I also want to hear about, how old your kids are, so I know and we know like what that situation looks like, and get an idea of how much help they need, and the roles that you're playing, all the different things that you're juggling. And then and just start there and hear about who you are, and then we can sort of jump into some of the problems and maybe some of the solutions. So Karima, why don't you start? Introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are and some of the really awesome things that you're working on right now.
Thank you, Janet. So my name is Karima Davis. I'm the founder of Tutor Partners. We are a virtual tutoring and test prep company. We are based in Maryland, and we work with families in and around Maryland and also in a few other states. And we have a client in Canada now, so we're a little bit international, which is exciting. But we work with families to really help students build confidence and just the skills they need to be successful academically and also in life in general. I've been doing that for the past 3 years, growing my business. And I've been an educator, a teacher for about 17 years now. I have homeschooled my children since my oldest daughter, who's now 22, started kindergarten 17 years ago.
Oh.
And yeah, and so that was just super exciting from the start. It's been a rough ride. I have 5 children, so I'm a mom of 5. And to give you an idea of their ages, so I have my 22-year-old who's the oldest, and I have an 18-year-old who graduated high school last year, a year early. She's now at UMBC. And then I have a 16-year-old, 10th grader, 13-year-old who is 7th grade, and I have a 4-year-old little girl. So I'm a mom of 4 girls, 1 boy. It's been, again, the ages are all over the place. So we've been kind of like, I've seen what it looks like to work from home and teach virtually, from kindergarten all the way up through high school. And it can be challenging at times. So I really do feel for families right now. And given the fact that most of the families the families that we're talking about right now who are going through this now in the pandemic, everyone's been kind of thrown into this. So it's different from someone like myself who chose to voluntarily homeschool, with my kids from home, be their teacher. It's different for someone who's kind of like thrown into it and like, hey, yeah, here, this is a new job for you to do. Take it and go with it, right? So I'm grateful for having the experience that I have, and it allows me to share what I do know that does work for families, and what things that families can do to make it work for them as they go through this challenging time.
Definitely.
Mm.
Darren, I want to hear from you. Tell me a little bit about the work that you're doing right now. Well, and the work that you were doing before. Tell me a little bit about your brand and where you are sitting today. And then your kids. Tell me about your kids and what you're grappling with.
So I am a graphic designer. I own my own company called 1953. where I offer creative direction and graphic design for small businesses, creative projects, some nonprofits, or special one-off projects. But I'm also the co-owner of an art space called Art Farm Studios right in Annapolis, along with Allison Harbaugh. And before COVID, my primary design work was with an agency, like a group that I had a contract with, and it was pretty steady, pretty flowed work. I have a 6-year-old now and an almost 3-year-old, and we had a good set of daycare, and my 6-year-old goes to Hillsmere, which is actually where I went to school, which is kind of first day of school, dropping her off was a huge throwback, brought a little tear to my eye. But so before, it's interesting because COVID has affected my work in both negative and positive ways because of the nature of what I do. And because I do a lot of creative consulting, the one thing that happened was that in the beginning, everything slowed down. And we had to adjust. My husband he's a contractor for DOD, the Department of Defense. So his work never slowed down. He is, it's probably gotten, more heightened and a little bit more because they had to just move so much stuff around because of COVID. But it really affected our day to day because we're like, oh, hold on. Okay, we have to now manage our children, their education and their time, because we have a toddler, who she's not understanding now. She's living her best life. Like, she's like, oh, we're home together every day. Like, what? I'm out here. I love this, right? And then we have a 6-year-old who was like, okay, well, I miss my friends. So how do we create the balance? So work slowed down in a big way. But then what happened for me professionally was that a lot of people, primarily women, were sitting at home and they were saying, I don't want to go back to normal. Like, normal was not where it is at, and I want to change it. So then it came, all right, on Facebook, does anybody know a graphic designer? Does anybody know a blah, blah, blah? And then it was like, oh, Darren, oh, my girlfriend, Darren. Oh, Darren, you should hit her up. And then it was like work dipped to work was like, just skyrocketed because now people are saying, I want to start my own business. I want to do my own thing. I want to, I want to have my own vision. I don't want to go back to normal. And, as far as the kids and juggling children, it was interesting. I always say that I feel like I had like an advantage because I was at home with both of my girls for almost a year when they were born. And we were able to work that out. And even though it was rough to do it, that's what I wanted to do. So even though we were on like a shoestring budget, especially with my first daughter, I wanted to be home with them. So I had the advantage of knowing what it was like to already be at home with your kids all day for months at a time. And that was a true advantage to me. I'm now grateful in hindsight for that time. So are there challenges? Yes. but and it's affected my work, but it's really just made my husband and I more creative and scheduling our time and resources in our household.
Absolutely.
I also want to say hi to Shadana. Her and I went to high school together.
I'm saying, I know Darren.
Oh, I love it. I love how much of a small world it is. Well, welcome, Shadana.
Hi.
I'm so glad you're joining us today.
Thank you.
First, I just have to shout out Dr. Shadana Harris.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
I've been reading recently, a lot of things about women and how hard you work for that degree and like, excuse me, but damn it, we're going to use that doctor. So throwing that out there. I want to honor that.
Thank you.
So Dr. Harris, if you could just take a moment to tell me a little bit about you and your career, where it was a year ago, and then pandemic hit, how it changed. So what does daily life look like for you? How old are your kids, and what does that juggle, that dance look like right now?
Yes. So I'm actually a therapist. I'm a mental health therapist. So I got my doctorate degree in clinical psychology in 2017, but I started the program in 2004. So took a long time. Life happened, babies happened. I was literally typing up my last chapter of my thesis after I had given birth to my son in the hospital bed, like finishing it up. So yes,
Oh my God.
getting it done. And he came 2 months early Christmas Day. Yeah.
Oh.
So getting it done. So I've been at this job. I started in November of 2019. Literally months previous to that, I had transitioned from an assessment job. So I was working at Target, DoorDash, and Instacart all at the same time while applying for this therapist job. And then I got the job still while working at all of those places and now back into therapy. And so before this job, I was a social worker for 8 years. So going into homes, going into schools, not used to like what I was doing for my profession, which is you come to my office, you sit on my couch. You know, I didn't think that's what I wanted to do. But then, I was like, okay, I think this is the license I need. Let me do these things. I got into this job and I was like, oh yes, therapy is great. Oh, this is awesome. I have my name on the door. It says Dr. Shadonna Harris. I got my books. I got my little candle. I'm like, this is awesome. Like I said, I started in November of 2019. Then the pandemic started. I was just like, okay, what does this mean? And in March, when she told us we couldn't come back to the office and they were shutting down, and I was like, okay, she didn't have a virtual plan. So that was scary, because I'm just like, this is how I make money. If they don't come, I don't get paid, So thankfully, we were able to talk to her enough for her to come up with a plan to get on this platform. So when I started doing virtual therapy, that was interesting because, again, we are taught you come to my office, you sit on my couch, we have a conversation. So there's an energy exchange, there's a safe space to hold. So it's a whole different mind frame of that I have to use. And I'm in a pandemic. So I got my own stuff, my own triggers, my own issues. Sometimes me and the client are just like, yeah, stuff is messed up, right? We're just sitting there, just both of us like, yeah, I don't even know what to say. Me either. Yeah, let's just yeah. Like with what stuff happened at the Capitol. Like I didn't know it was happening. My client told me they were literally watching the news. And that's the other aspect I think of doing therapy virtually is that it's very convenient for me. I'm in my closet. You can't tell. If I took my background off, all you would see is a door, and that's what the clients see, and I have my desk here. And the clients, they come, in their pajamas, a blanket, a robe, at work, in their car, so it's made it super convenient for them. And my husband, he was working doing maintenance in public buildings. So he wasn't able to do that anymore. The risk of exposure was just too high. So he decided, he'd be able to leave his job, and he had some health issues as well. And so that way that would allow him time to heal. He could help with the kids with school. I could work from 11 a.m. until like 6:15, 7 p.m., depending on the day. Monday through Thursday. I don't work on the weekends or Fridays. So that allows me that time. And I think the only challenge has been like my son, he's 4. So if he gets away from my husband, and he runs back here and the door isn't locked and I gotta, excuse me. Okay, sorry, or he'll make a noise. He made a noise like he was behind me. I think my husband was vacuuming or something, and he squawked like really loudly. And my client was like, I don't know if that was a child or an animal. I was like, I know, right? Exactly.
You're like, me neither.
You're right. I don't know
I don't
either.
know either.
Exactly. So yeah, so that has been it's been great for me. And it's kind of like I think what Darren was saying, like I don't want to go back to the office. I like being able to be home. And if I want to eat something, I can go in my fridge. And if I need to use the restroom, I can use my restroom. Want to take a nap, my bed is right behind me. So it's hard to think about like, okay, we're going to go back to seeing people in the office. Like, I don't want to. This is nice. It's just very convenient.
It is.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
definitely. I think that is, the silver lining to all of this is that there are some positives, which is
Mhm.
great. Um,
Mhm.
I want to talk a little bit about your kids and like how they're doing and
Mhm.
what this looks like in terms of their needs, and what are the
Mhm.
challenges on their end. So Darren, I'll start with you. Having a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, they're going to have really different needs, and what
Mhm,
school looks like for them and that experience
mhm.
right now is, or childcare is really different. So if you could just talk a little bit about some of those challenges, what are the challenges that your kids are going through and how you're handling them?
In the beginning, the hardest part really for us as a household was handling the virtual schedule at school.
Mm,
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
was so hard because, and God bless those teachers because they also had to transition. The teacher that Evan had at Hillsmere, Mrs. Tippett, who was wonderful, you could tell it was hard for her because when we did our one-on-one meetings with her, she was like, I've been teaching for 17 years
Mhm.
and I am very much a classroom teacher, so it was a transition for everybody, but the schedules were very hard for us because they would go to school for a couple hours, then break for a couple hours, and then go back to school. And that's when I was like, you know what? We're going to homeschool
Mhm.
because I have a good amount of friends that homeschooled. My little brother was homeschooled, so my mom gave me a lot of gems. And I was like, we can do this. We have the resources.
Mhm.
We have enough people in our circle that will give us the knowledge that will assist and maybe show us what we need to do, what we should stay away from, maybe what curriculum, we should look at. And we jumped. Oh man, we jumped in and contacted and in Anne Arundel County, they were great. The homeschool, they've been wonderful. And so once we made that transition, things got a little better, right? In the
Mhm. Mhm.
beginning, the hardest part for my 6-year-old was like, oh, I miss my friends, right? And in the summertime, it was easier to do play dates because we had a couple of families that we really trusted and that we would say, okay, we're going to create our own little circle, like our own little bubble, right? And and we wouldn't do multiple, like we would only meet up with like one kid at a time, because we were like, we want to be serious about this. We want to take it seriously. And that was easier because they could go outside, they could go to Quiet Waters Park, they could, now it's a little, but I think for her now, she still misses her friends, she misses her cousins.
Mhm.
Because I'm one of four, and then my husband's sister is here. So most of our nieces and nephews live in Maryland,
Mhm.
and they're all around the same age. So, she that is a little hard for her every now and then, but for the most part, I would say she is like more. My 6-year-old is like more well adjusted than most like adults I know,
Mhm.
which is I'm blessed for it. Like she gives, like she'll come look at me and say, "Oh, mommy, are you a little frustrated today?" Like she's like our therapist at the house. Oh, and and of course, like I said, my 3-year-old is like loving life. Like I asked her, I said,
Mhm.
"Do you want to go back to daycare?" And she said, "No." Like, no, I don't. No, I do not. This is our life now. Um, so once we changed, home to homeschool, that really opened us up. And it definitely, because I run my own businesses, I have flexibility. My husband doesn't have that
Mhm.
flexibility, right? So it was, he gets up and he does the morning stuff. He
Mhm.
makes breakfast, he gets us prepared, and I prep for homeschool and I do homeschool, and then I start working after lunch.
Mhm.
So, for me, it was the transition of switching the mindset and shifting my
Mhm.
energy to go from, and also I don't want my 3-year-old to be stuck on her little pink tablet all day because she wants to watch Nick Jr., and
Mhm.
Abby
Mhm.
Hatcher and everything else. Like, so then it's like, okay, well, she has to be engaged as well. She has to learn as well. Cause when she was at
Mhm.
daycare, she was learning. And so then it became like endless nights of like, okay, researching. Okay, what do I do with my toddler? How do I incorporate it with my 6-year-old? how can I teach them both something, keep them engaged, keep them off the tablets, but be engaged with them so that when they know mommy has to go to work now and I have to close the door because I have to focus, they don't feel neglected, right? Because that's the other, I would say the hardest part is that even though we're with each other every day, right, they're still children. And my toddler is still a toddler. And mommy closes the door. And if I lock the door,
You have to lock the door.
The door, like my 3-year-old,
yeah, they get mad.
They get mad, and
it's
say,
personal.
Yeah, it's just like, Daddy, mommy locked door. Like, I can't believe she did this to me. So it's become like, you know, managing, also letting them know, one, you will survive. Like, you guys will survive, and not coddling them. But also, two, making sure that they have the good, legit quality time so that they can feel fulfilled while I am away working, because they, even though my husband is present, they look to me for that quality and that comfort as a mom, you know? And I think that's been the biggest thing is, okay, how do I make sure, and also making sure, like, put my phone down, you know, if I'm with them, put my phone away, don't check a work email, because they need that time. Because when they're at school, right, the reason why they love their teachers and their daycare providers is because they are attentive. And so thinking, okay, that needs to be when it's my kids' time, it's my kids' time. And if that time is from 9:30 to 12:30, that 3 hours is only theirs. No phone calls, no text messages, no nothing. And once we started setting that in, that started getting us over the hump of any issues that we were having, because I started noticing that they were acting out because we were trying to, like, okay, well, I got to jump on this call real quick. Okay, well, I got to do this. And then they were acting out, and they were not acting themselves. They're good kids. And we're not a household where we like yell a lot. We don't raise our voices a lot. And I found myself like a couple of times like having to yell at them, like, what are you guys doing? And then I had to sit back and go, but why are they acting like this? Right. And realizing that it was because we were rushing around trying to fulfill our duties as workers and as parents who are bringing in an income. But while doing that, there were pockets where they were feeling neglected. That was our biggest hurdle in the beginning. And I feel like once we got into a groove of that, and then like my husband being like, okay, I'm going to get off of work and I'm going to do a puzzle with the kids, or I'm going to just sit with them and watch their shows with them. Right. It's showing them that, you know, my 3-year-old, she'll walk in the room and go, Mommy, turn your computer off. You know, like she's already, it's like the computer is taking my time. And so I think that was the biggest like adjustment, you know, of this is why, but the biggest plus has been opening up that conversation and not talking to our children like they're children, and saying, Mommy and Daddy have to work and this is why, but what do you guys need from us? You know, what do you guys want to do? What do you want to do? And opening those doors, it shifted our household for the better, right? It showed us what balance looks like, and it created a better balance for them. So, you know, I'm grateful that we haven't hit a lot of really hard walls, but it's that balance. That lack of balance was monumental. It was so stressful.
Yeah, Darren, I can say, I just want to say, I applaud you for making the decision to do what was best for your family, for figuring that part out, that like homeschooling is going to be it's going to be a better option for us, because I cannot tell you how many families that I listen to every day who are feeling stuck, and they're settling for what their current situation is because they feel like they don't have another option, because they're afraid that homeschooling won't work for me. My schedule is like this, or like, you know, they have a lot of reasons why it won't work for them. But And I'm not saying that there are some families who might truly not be able to do it at this particular time because of whatever their situation is, but there are a lot of ways to make it flexible, to make it happen. And I truly believe, it literally pains me to watch kids, to know that there are kids out there who are suffering with this, like, whether it's struggling with their confidence, or struggling
Mhm.
with, thinking they can't do the work, or learning is not working for them, and they're thinking that it's something wrong with them, when in reality there's nothing wrong with them. And it's really just that we have to make sure learning is something that's unique for each person. And when we put our kids in school, and I love schools, and teachers are some of my favorite people. I'm a teacher, but I feel like school, traditional school, really does put our children in a box. And it
Mhm.
says that you have to learn the way the teacher teaches. And every student learns differently. So it's
Differently.
important for us to really take time out to understand that piece of it, and to say, um, my child, this is not working for my child. So
Mhm.
what do I need to do to help them, to make it work for them? So that they're able to learn, so they're able to fulfill their potential, and not feel like it's something that it's a defect on their behalf, and that this is, you know, everyone learns differently. So kudos to you for,
Mhm.
making that decision. And, I'm so happy that it's working for you, because it is just one piece of stress, one less stress that we need to have on
Mhm.
our plates, is just this whole
Okay.
learning thing. It's really um we some for some people, I think we're making it more complicated than it
Mhm.
already is. It's already a little
Mhm.
bit complicated, right? So
Yeah.
it's, I just think that mindset shift that you said you had to make, and that energy shift, it's so important, just to think outside of the box, and be open to other solutions, and not settle for whatever your current situation is. Know that there's so many options. I mean,
Mm.
so many options. And, I work with families every day. So I'm willing, if anyone wants advice about what they could possibly do, please reach out. And I am happy to, offer my advice, or point you in the right direction.
Karima, what have you seen with your kids, both in terms of your actual children, um, in terms of the last 9 months, but then also in terms of your clients? What are some of the biggest challenges that you're noticing?
So with my children, and also with clients, it's the social aspect, for
Mm.
sure, is one of the biggest things that my kids are missing out on right now. Because as Darren mentioned, we also, even though they were homeschooled over the past, few years, they actually went to school for 2 years the year before last, in an actual brick and mortar school. And so when making that transition from that back to homeschooling again, we created a routine where they would meet up with friends, and they do their sports or whatever activities after school. But then when COVID hit, that all changed. So we had to
Mhm.
get a little bit creative too. So we did create our little bubble, as Darren described, and they would meet up with one friend, and kind of do that. But now that school's back in session, it's a little bit trickier, because everyone's schedule is different, and it's not
Mhm.
always as easy to make it all work. So that is one of the biggest struggles, for sure, is just figuring out how to keep them socially active. And they get a little bit down when they can't see their friends as much as they would like to, when the schedules don't, when the schedules conflict, and things of that sort. um, with clients, it's the social aspect that's a big piece of it. With um, just in general academics, learning is just such a challenge for so many children, especially children with special needs or learning challenges. That is where I see most families are with, who have children with learning challenges. They are just really finding it difficult to keep their kids engaged and
Mhm.
focused. And on top of it all, executive functioning skills are really coming out now. Like, my kid can't keep this stuff organized, and I understand that, because again, I have my son is 13, and that's something that I'm still working on with him. He's not there yet with his
Mhm.
executive functioning skills. So that the organization skills are a big factor. They're coming in, like they're coming out. Everyone's noticing like, okay, my kid was not as organized before, but now I'm really seeing this and it's affecting everything. Assignments are missing left and right, grades are dropping, just every day. One of my colleagues, we joked that watching the grades is like watching the stock market,
Yeah.
because it's like they go up
They
and down,
plummet up and down.
Yeah, and it's because of the way the systems, the platforms are set up, so that if a teacher inputs a grade or a new assignment, of course it's going to make the grade, go down or seem as if it went down. But then there are also situations where kids are actually missing assignments. So that's something that, parents want to stay on top of. But I always remind parents of the fact that you don't want to add additional stress to yourself, unnecessarily. So, watching the grades, like maybe have a bi-weekly check-in of the grades, right? But don't sit and watch the grades all day or, every day checking in, because you're going to drive yourself crazy. And what happens after that is that you push that anxiety onto your child. So, we have every intention as moms, right, to help our kids be successful, but we don't realize sometimes that we feed off of each other's energy. And so it's important to be mindful of that stress that we have, or if we have any stress, whether it's from work, whether it's from, I check the grades and they don't look that good, honey. We need to be mindful of how we are, what we go to our kids with, take a minute to breathe or do whatever you need to do to manage, how your energy and all of that, your emotions, before you go to your child, because they're already experiencing so much stress. And a lot of the stress that parents are feeling it's being pushed onto the kids, and it's not healthy for them. It's not going to help them do any better in their schoolwork if they're feeling all this pressure, because things are just all, a little bit frustrating right now and all over the place. So we want to work to help each other and not just add that additional stress factor.
And we forget that the kids get stressed out because they're kids. So we just think that, no, I'm stressed out, I actually have to like live life. But we forget that like they're living life too, and they have their own significant stresses. And that's the one thing that I'm like, okay, that's the one thing I'm seeing too. When you said that, I was like, yeah, that's they have their own stresses, they have their own anxieties.
Absolutely, especially teenagers, younger students too, the younger kids, definitely. But the teens, juniors and seniors, they are, so ninth graders I'm seeing that are just entering high school this year. High school is a transition period, right? It's a new stage in life. And it is tough for kids to get into high school now, starting high school in a virtual world where they have to learn not only how to learn in this environment while their teachers are still learning and adapting to teaching in this environment, but also it's learning at a totally different pace, because high school is so much more demanding than middle school. So ninth graders, and then 11th and 12th graders who are preparing for college, their worlds have just been flipped, right? The kids who were taking sports and doing all these band and everything that they loved and that they enjoy, it's been stripped away from them. That on top of their friends, seeing their friends, being social. So, and add that to the fact that they're just in 11th grade, which requires SAT prep and this and that and driver's license and, college applications in 12th grade and, essays and all the things, scholarships, so it's a lot that our kids are dealing with right now. So we really have to be, a little bit more compassionate with them. And if your kid doesn't, if they're overwhelmed with having 5 AP classes, by all means, think about, reconsider and reevaluate what's happening, what they're able to handle. What are they really able to handle right now? Because our kids, their mental health is so much more important than anything else.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So already I've heard so many tips and tricks that you're throwing out, from Darren's suggestion of be really present when you are with your kids. So no phones, create those clear expectations and boundaries, but then make sure that you are achieving balance. And then I also like what you said, Darren, in terms of treating your kids as adults, even though they're little, you
Mhm.
know, they'll rise to the occasion if you're like, all right, this is my work time, this is my space. I spent some awesome time doing puzzles with you. Now I need a little space as well.
Mhm.
And then Karima, I love your suggestions of being mindful and really being aware of our own parental stress and
Mhm.
not bringing that to the table when we're managing our kids, and that self-care aspect of let's just take a breath before we enter into this challenging conversation. And so
Mhm.
we can do that with compassion. And your comment about how compassion is so important, I think especially in these moments where the world is so crazy and we're so anxious, it's hard to be like, okay, I need to be maternal and loving and give that big hug and put aside my anxieties.
Mhm.
Shadana, I want to hear from you. I want to hear how you're doing with your kids, what their biggest challenges are, and any sort of tips or tricks that you've noticed have really worked for your family.
Yes. So I don't know if I mentioned I have a 9-year-old. She'll be 10 in June. So she's in the fourth grade. And then my son, who's 4, he is in ECI classes, so early childhood intervention classes. So when he was born early, he was in hospital for about 4 months. He had a G tube at a point. So he never really drank from a bottle. And he needed occupational therapy to help with speech. So he has a delayed speech processing and verbal delay. So he goes to school to help with his speech. That's the difficult part for me, is that he goes to school from about 8:30. He's supposed to go from 8:30 till 11, but I start work at 11. So while my
Mm.
husband is helping and doing things in the house with the older one, I'm helping the little one, we're both in school basically, while he's in school and doing his thing. I'm multitasking between helping him point at the screen, say the words, and then I'm writing my notes or writing my progress notes or sending my emails. I have to go back and forth because there is no other time to go in between, because on the weekends and on Fridays, I'm not doing any work. That's the time that I get to really be with them and not have to worry about any of that. So I think that's one tip definitely that's been helpful for me, is knowing that I'll have those 3 days to be able to just
Mm,
have that time spend with them, so I don't feel so guilty when I'm in here for several hours at a time. And then the interesting thing for my daughter has been when she was in school, she is very talkative. She likes to talk a lot. I was the same way. You couldn't sit me next to anybody, right? It's like, okay, you got to move you. It's like, great, I know her too. So, so transitioning to this, I thought it was going to be hard for her. I thought it was going to be difficult. She's actually done great. She's done wonderful. She's been more on top of it than she was when she was at school. I'm
Mm.
not sure what that's about. I'm pretty sure I will find out, as time goes along. But I do know that she's always, she has her little alarms for when she's supposed to be back in class. She knows when her time is, when she's supposed to go back. So it's worked out for her. She hasn't really said anything about like missing her friends or anything. To be honest, we're her friends. Whether we want to be or not, like she wants to play with us all the time. So when she shows us everything, and then she has a cousin who's a little bit younger than her, she'll see from time to time, and they FaceTime each other. So she's been fine with that. And that's not to say that they don't get stir crazy, both of them in here. They
Mhm.
be in the house with each other, just running around, her and my son, just chasing each other, yelling, just letting out energy. And I'm like, okay, we gotta get out the house. Let's like go for a walk or do something, get some air. And then the other thing that I find interesting, I wanted to talk about what Karima was talking about as far as like compassion for the kids. And like I said, I'm a therapist, so I talk to a lot of people. So those are people that are in college, and those are people that are parents that have children that are in school. And so I find that is tends to be an issue, is that when you feel like your child isn't grasping the material, or they're not, they're missing the assignments, and you're getting angry at them. It's like you're taking it personal in some way, and trying to figure out why that is. It's that they're going through something too, just like we are, and having that compassion to be able to help them through this process, I think is beneficial. And for my college kids, it's been really difficult for them, from the ones that are just like they were freshmen coming in because they thought this whole experience was going to be different. You know, they thought, oh, college are going to be the best years of your life. This is what everybody's telling them. And then they get to this and they're like, okay, well, I can't even live on campus. I can't do this. Everything's virtual, you know. And then for some of them that have been in school for a while and have been doing great and now are really struggling because they have this, you know, anxiety about like turning in assignments, make some people like really have anxiety about technology, you know, and they don't want to push the wrong buttons. They'll erase their whole, you know, assignment. They can't turn it into the right professor, things of that nature. So, you know, I've had a couple of them just say, look, I'm going to come back to school when it's back to normal because this isn't what I signed up for. This isn't the tuition that I would like to pay, you know, I want to be in school, you know, and it can really weigh on your self-esteem, thinking like, am I a good student? Does this mean I'm a horrible student? And it's like, no, we're in a pandemic. Everybody's stressed. Even your teachers are stressed, you know?
Mhm.
So trying to have that understanding and empathy for the situation. So yeah.
I
Yeah,
was laughing,
I
Shadana, for a second
Mhm.
about the technology question point
Yeah.
about pushing the wrong button because that's me. I'm like, I don't know.
Yes.
So
Exactly. You
I
get
can
scared.
resonate with I can relate to that for sure.
Exactly. It's a real thing, you know. I have a kid
It
now,
is.
and then like a lot of my kids are in art school. So it's like that, like that's hard. How do you do art school
Yeah.
virtually?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
I don't understand. So they're like, look, I'll just wait until school comes back in session and
Yeah.
then because I have to be hands-on, I have to be there.
Yeah, there are so many different challenges. And I think each
Mhm.
one of us is sort of dealing with those different aspects of whether it be your profession or personal life, where it's just like, I can't quite get over this one aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Shadana, though, I loved what you said about get out of the house. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you just need
Yeah.
to get out of the house and like take the whole
Mhm.
family with you, or even go on a walk by yourself.
Yeah.
And I think what you said in terms of using rewards for, and I
Mhm.
think a lot of times we think about as parents, we think about, okay,
Mm.
let's use rewards for our kids, but you're talking about rewards for yourself. And I love
Right.
that. Like, let's
Yeah.
make sure we're rewarding ourselves. Like, let's look forward to that weekend. It's like this big push. I can do it. And then I'm going to do this thing that's really kind for myself. And
Mhm.
then the other thing that I love that you said is don't personalize. Don't
Mhm.
take the negative things that are going on personally, and what, just going back to what you said, Karima, is then tie that into compassion and move forward
Mhm.
both with your kids and
Exactly.
yourself and your partner with compassion.
Mhm.
Well, I just wanted to give a huge thank you to all three of you for joining me here today to discuss
Sure.
these ups and downs of parenting, and trying to navigate this system with our kids and how we can look out for them in the best way possible, and take this time with them, and try to make it positive, and hopefully that they're learning something too, and that we're
Mhm.
not pulling our hair out in the process. So thank you to Dr. Shadana Harris. Thank you to Karima Davis. And thank you to Darren Michelle Gilliam for being here today to talk about these challenges. Thank you also to all of our viewers and listeners at home. Make sure that you visit Chesapeake Family for up-to-date local information on health, home, and living for today's Maryland parent. This episode will be archived on chesapeakefamily.com in both video and podcast format, so make sure you check it out. I'm Janet Jefferson with Third Floor Views and Chesapeake Family Life. Thank you so much.